three major problems, which is, here's the three major things going on with the game currently, okay? And you should understand all of these to understand the state of the game. Okay, let's talk about the state of the game for Diablo Immortal currently. Let's look at the game. So let's put it this way, okay? So currently in the state of the game, we are all at Hell 5. If you didn't know, Hell 5 is the last difficulty. Now, if you also didn't know, the way you farm gear in this game is that the difficulty determines how the set items will be, meaning as you increase Paragon, set item stats do not increase. It only goes based upon whatever difficulty you're in. However, legendary items increase because of your Paragon, meaning a 240 exceptional that's absolutely 100% best row exceptional at 240 will be worse than absolutely best exceptional at 250. Now, with the recent update into the game, the recent major update, we know they added things like invocations. So if we scroll down, we actually look, your dash skills have a chance to trigger ancestral invocation, and the ancestral invocation are the ones that comes off the property with the latest update. This was one of the updates that had the recent drama because this forces us into a warband to do things like the ancestral tableau. Now, realistically, what this actually means is most people are going to just be doing their warband raids exactly like they were already doing with their warband people, slowly upgrading the tableau, getting whatever combat rating bonus they can from the side of this, because this game here is realistically all about combat rating. Some of the other games that we're going to be talking about today are not. We'll mention that. However, because we're at the last difficulty, my combat rating is over 1,000 higher than the combat rating of the monsters that in our current activity, meaning I've already hit the cap of 22% increased damage and 18% decreased damage, meaning gaining more combat rating literally does nothing for me. Absolutely nothing. The only stat increase I'm actually gaining at this point in terms of Hell 5 difficulty is if I get more strength, more vitality, it'll give me more HP, it will give me more damage, or like 42 gives me more armor penetration, right? So I can increase these secondary stats to do things like increasing your critical hit damage, but again, there's diminishing returns on things like this as well. So what this realistically means because of all of this is now that we're all at Hell 5, what we're actually going to be doing is farming dungeons over and over and over and over and over again for like the next 100 Paragon levels, because there's no reason to farm a whole bunch of legendary gear right now at 240 Paragon when I can wait till I'm 300 Paragon and get a 60 Paragon jump. Like, why would you want to farm 241 Paragon gear, then 242 Paragon gear, then 243 Paragon gear, when you can wait for 300 or whatever level you're going to start farming it at, and during all the time in between, you can be farming something that does not work with Paragon gear. Meaning we currently have a loop in the game of farm dungeons, 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 which is part of the reason why I think they actually opened dungeons up to solo. Now, the end game is kind of the same thing as all the other difficulties where you basically just want to farm a whole bunch of dungeons because it's most efficient to do it at the beginning of every difficulty. But now it lasts forever because we don't have another difficulty to look forward to. We don't have another thing looking forward to in the future. So everyone's blinders are kind of off with the game and you're hit in the face with the obvious revelation of, oh, combat rating doesn't really mean too much once we actually get to the end. And I'm not talking anything like Helicory raids. I understand in PvP, if you have more combat rating than the person next to you, it's never moving goalposts. You're on a treadmill with these types of people, and we need to compete in PvP, etc. I'm talking for the main game, things like dungeons, things for the Hell 5 difficulty, overworld farming, basically most things that the average casual user, or even the average user, not even the casual user, will be experiencing. Combat rating after a certain point, after you got your 22%, doesn't really matter too much, and now you're just min-maxing the stats. So because we're at the Hell 5 and there's no Hell 6 to look into, and it's all blinders are off, and it's very obvious that this is what's going on. Now, also, the Ancestral Tableau added in the Warband focus, which, as we all know, there was a pretty good amount of blowback from the community about the Warband focus. So the state of the game really is we have people in a little bit of a lull where it's better to farm just dungeons. So people are kind of bored when they're logging in because all they're really doing is just farming dungeons, dungeons, dungeons. And then it's a little bit also annoying because you're farming dungeons, but then in this game, if you want to store all of your pieces, if you want to store your strength, intelligence gear, etc., and you want to have all the sets, and they added a new set, you can't really fit everything into your inventory. And of course, they can monetize upon the problem they've created, much like Undecember, which we'll talk about in a moment, where what they actually end up doing is they sell you the solutions to the inventory expansion, etc. So there's some pain points in the game that we've already talked about and experienced. Now, I will say this, that games like Raid Shadow Legends, that when I played for the first year or so, were absolutely dog shit. Those games were terrible for the first year. Mostly mobile games take a while. They normally launch them with kind of like an infrastructure, real skeleton base of the game, and then they slowly build upon the wireframe that they've installed, and they make the game better and better and better. And along the way, you'll lose some of the people that are getting impatient for the game to get better and better, or that have played through the lifespan of what the game currently has to offer, etc. I believe this game is still sort of in the development phase, if you want to know the truth of it. I think they're still sort of making the game into a good game. I think eventually will be a good game. I don't know that it is currently one right now. The reason I say this is because pretty much more or less everything we've been asking for is being added to the game. I will say one thing. The amount of which we're asking for being added to the game has been in debate. So we've asked things like, I'll give you a recent example, one that's in the community's eye. We've asked for solo dungeons. They have added solo dungeons. Now, maybe they didn't go as far as we would have liked and added solo dungeons that are scalable per person, meaning it's as easy to run it single as it is for 4-man. And maybe they didn't add that bonus chest for everyone, only for the people with 4. But they added the solo dungeons. Let's say that we wanted ways to craft 5-star legendary gems. Well, they added them. They added the pros. Now, 40 weeks is a little long, we'll agree. And we know that they're going to do, let's say, half of that. Let's say they do it 20 weeks. It's still kind of long. So you can see what they're doing is they're kind of adding in everything we're asking for. Like treasure goblins have legendaries, okay? Shadow leaders can now have multiple substitutes. They're taking the suggestions from the community and they're implementing it into the game, but they're not so far knocking it out of the park in terms of implementation. So what we have is we have a doubling down of 3 major problems, which is, here's the 3 major things going on with the game currently, okay? And you should understand all of these to understand the state of the game. So first and foremost, we have a situation where it's all better for us all just to farm dungeons right now for the next like 100 Paragon levels. Because like I've already mentioned, the legendary gear, scales of Paragon, there's no reason to farm 240, then 241, then 242 gear. Like just go farm all your set for like a month. If there's no new hell difficulty coming, just go farm your set gear until it's absolutely ridiculous. You got triple sets, whatever, then go farm your legendary gear because it's mathematically more efficient. So we got this situation where everyone's just doing that. Then we have this situation where they've kind of forced us all together into warbands. So even though they were like, hey, we're going to make it where you don't all have to play together, like we actually do all have to play together because warband raids are the best way to get your warband activity. So even though we only have to have 4, not 8, which I do like that, we still have to have 4, and we have to have 4 almost more commonly than before, because if you leave this warband raid, you are heavily punished because your ancestral tableau progression goes away. So because of that, you really are locked in almost more so into playing with people than previous, even though mathematically and logistically they made it where you're locked out less. Like realistically, you actually are basically locked out even more. So we get this feeling of like, hey, you guys added something new into the game, but then you didn't really listen to community feedback. So that kind of tilted people, to be honest. And then we had the recent update with things like the pearls, where it's 40 weeks and the math starts going bad. And then what we have is, on top of all of this, then we have new games coming out like Undecember. Now, some people, I guess, are not able to see objectively what I'm saying in some videos where I mentioned that Undecember is pay to win, and they instantly think I'm trying to somehow shill for Diablo Immortal or Blizzard paid me to do a hit job on the game. Make no mistake, I like Undecember. And the reason I came out with a video saying this game is pay to win is because, guess what? It's pay to win. There's literally an auction house. You can buy whatever you want. You can buy crafting equipment. You can buy everything you want in this game, okay? Full stop. So I don't get the argument that it's not pay to win. I could buy power right now if I wanted to. It has an infinite cap on how much money you can spend in the game. That does not make it a bad game. This is also a mobile game, which is interesting because the depth of this game is quite significant. And if you actually go to things like skills, you can see there's multiple build paths, etc. And you can build different kinds of characters all while owning the same character. You can have a ranger that does summons. You can have a mage that uses a sword, whatever. So you can have these variety in builds. But what this actually ends up doing is I think it's doubly frustrating the Diablo Immortal players that tiptoe and try these other games, because they're like, look, not only do I have to farm dungeons for like 100 Paragon straight in order to be like the most efficient and then farm legendary items, but while I'm doing this and farming the ancestral tableau, which by the way I don't want to do, which we directly told them we don't want to do, while I'm doing this I have to do it with the same build, because there's realistically only 1, 2, if I'm being very generous, like 3 good builds per character, per class. So there's not really like as much variety, and you don't feel as unique with your character. When you're in the party, for instance, with like a demon hunter, you know the other demon hunter right next to you has the exact same build as you, and realistically, the only thing you guys are doing is you're competing for that combat rating, so you feel less like an individual and more like a grindy robot. I think this is currently where most people are feeling in Diablo Immortal. Let me know if I'm way off on this, but I think people are really starting to get into the grind. The blinders are off. They're realizing the in-game combat rating doesn't mean as much, and we're all kind of like antsy for the next update, because realistically, we need to know what the game plan is. So in my suggestion, it would be really nice to have some kind of like 6-month roadmap or some way to look into the future so that we know the grind right now has meaning. I think Diablo Immortal currently is at its low spot, not in terms of quality, because we are actually continually getting updates that, in my opinion, will make the game better for looking at it from a long period of time, like the crafting, the 5-star gems, etc. We just aren't getting them knocked out of the park because the numbers need to be tweaked a little bit better. And then we're also a little bit discouraged, I think, in the game when we're seeing these other games come out at the same time, and we're getting a lot of excitement and hype around new things, but then we don't have something like a roadmap to look into the future to be able to help us with our grind that we're doing right now, out of faith that the game will hopefully be better in the future, or if not better, they'll tweak the numbers, or there's another difficulty coming, or something for us to look into the future and be like, this is the reason I'm grinding. It's not just to get the combat rating higher, just to get a useless leaderboard reward. So I think that's currently the state of the game. Game is getting better. That doesn't mean it's not a little bit of a grind and a little bit boring right now. There are other competitors that are showing up on the scene that are making it a little bit scarier for more of the Diablo Immortal crowd. And I would heavily suggest you just to try those competitors, and maybe you'll see if there's something you like with those other games. Undecember is an enjoyable game. Don't expect these other action RPGs that are mobile not to be pay to win. They all are, but absolutely give them a shot and see if you enjoy it, because for all you know, you might play that game a few months, come back in Diablo Immortal has made some significant progress, and maybe you're willing to try it again, and then you have the things like the server Paragon catch-up experience that make it easy to get back into it, etc. I was playing with one person just today who was trying to catch up because he hadn't played, since the beginning. He was kind of a new guy in my clan, and he got 400 combat rating just during the runs that we were helping him with Hell 5. So you can always catch up if they come out with a new difficulty, etc. Just one opinion. That's where the game is. I'd say the game's not dead. There's other competitors coming out. There's a little bit of a negative morale, I would say, at the moment. Just how I feel about it. Let me know your comments down below how you feel. Love you all. Thanks for watching. And I'm going to be making some Undecember guide videos here quite soon. You can probably catch me live at twitch.tv/darthmicrotransaction if you care to see it live, and I'll see you on the next video. Consider subscribing, liking, all that YouTube garbage.